Hey, how's it going there, folks? Welcome back here to a Thursday night. It is the Earthmaster on this end with an update video here. April 18th, 2024, 10:45 p.m. here, California time. Latest activity shows some movement there into the California region still. Still watching some earthquake activity ramp up here around the southern portion of the state. We did see a 4-pointer coming in here earlier during the day today, a 4.3. Looks like that has turned into a pretty decent amount of earthquake activity here. I'm hoping that this is just aftershock activity, but again, been watching Southern California here recently for some larger movement. There's that activity stirring up here outside the Bodfish area. It looks like it's very close to the one of the canyon faults out here, a ways away from Bakersfield. The most recent earthquake there at 3.2. So got to watch the multitude, got to watch the magnitudes, and see what else is going around the region here. Now, if we look away from this area, we're seeing a handful of earthquakes light up here in the last couple hours or so, some out in Nevada as well. So regionally speaking, I think we need to keep an eye here on Southern California. We've seen a handful of earthquakes up north here and also down south into the Gulf of California. Of course, that puts California in the middle point out here between the two zones. So for right now, let's see what we got for a total tally. It looks like about 20 earthquakes, roughly about 2 to 3 kilometers here below the surface. That 4.3, the main quake so far, that earthquake was felt around the area here, Bakersfield, up into Fresno as well. Looks like maybe some folks down in Los Angeles reported that shaking in that region as well. So just kind of watching it, keeping an eye on things. We'll see how this behaves overnight, if the swarms continue, or if maybe we see a new area of swarming down here across Southern California. But in general, activity seems a little heightened out here. Some movement out here in the Garlock Fault shear zone as well. A couple ones kicking up here now. This area plays a major part on accumulating slip or accumulating strain out here across the area of the plate boundary, the San Andreas Fault. Kind of acts as a spring. You got the shear fault system here that runs almost completely opposite of how the San Andreas Fault runs here, which is a northwest to southeast type of movement. So just kind of keeping an eye on things here. Specifically on the San Andreas Fault right now, things are pretty quiet. There's not a whole lot of earthquake activity here to report on the plate boundary itself. But notice these, as I mentioned, these other areas here showing some movement. Northern California appears to be the quiet zone for now, aside from some activity here around the Clear Lake volcanic field. This is very typical for this time of any day at this time of this region here. That's what I'm trying to say. This area does see quite a bit of earthquake activity out here on any given day. There's quite a few hydrothermal plants out here in the vicinity of these earthquakes, and they create energy by utilizing the heated areas below the surface. Up into the Pacific Northwest, looks like a little bit of movement. A little clustering going on up here outside of Seattle, well north of, looks like northwest here of Seattle. 19, 20 kilometers or so deep below the surface for a handful of microquakes out there. Let's see what we got for the tremor map here tonight. Cascadia tremor and only 21 epicenters. Not a big deal whatsoever. Past week or so, we did see a little bit of tremor activity here on Saturday and the Sunday this past weekend, but things have died down here since. And this is basically not earthquake activity, but tremor that occurs down into the subduction zone of the Cascadia, which of course sits offshore here and is building up enough steam to produce a megaquake here one day. Last megaquake was back in 1700. All right, around the Yellowstone area, looks like a handful of smaller quakes. Let's double check the Yellowstone map. There's a lot of the earthquake activity that's happening in the Gulf of California. Now, these earthquakes are 4s and 5s. I think the largest one we've seen down there, let me go down here real quick, is a 5.6 about 8 o'clock this morning. But I think we've seen some further activity down here since then. And that's what we're seeing showing up here on quite a few seismograph stations. Going to be these readings as soon as it loads here. Not for sure. There we go. These readings right here. See all these little blips going on here? Those are distant earthquakes, and those are showing up across a good portion of Yellowstone National Park. I'm sure they'll show up on other seismograph stations as well, but I'm noticing that the earthquake activity in the Gulf is definitely showing up a distance away. I don't know what's going on with that site, a little weird. So I'm going to back out of there real quick. And now USGS only showing, normally 4.5. Here's a 4.2 or so. A look at their map in the last 7 days of earthquake activity shows about 10 earthquakes in this region, including that 5.6 this morning. I know we've had more, so we're going to go check out the EMSC model, which does a pretty good job of monitoring the earthquake activity out here. And as you can see, in the last 24 hours alone, there's been a handful. Last 48 hours, that adds a lot of the movement there from yesterday. So we got something big time going on down here in the Gulf of California. And that's why I said this morning to watch the movement there in California, upstream, right? Just about half an hour after I said that, we've seen the 4-pointer there outside of Bakersfield. And obviously there is some elevated activity out here. I don't think we're done yet. Need to keep an eye on the West Coast. Let's go back here to this map, see what we got here. The last hour doesn't show a whole bunch. I got a little gnat that just landed on me. It's getting that time of year, right? Bugs are starting to come out. 5.6 earlier this morning, 5.2. Quite a few 4s and 3s out here as well. So overall, definitely heightened out here across this plate boundary, which consists of a few spreading seafloor centers and strike-slip fault zones here. And it's pretty active. It's been a while since we've seen any type of earthquake activity in this magnitude and multitude down there in that area. So keep an eye here, West Coast, be on guard. Texas, out here around the Pecos, Texas area, handful of earthquakes around the oil fields. Once again, nothing new. Up into the New Madrid seismic zone here. Looks like we got a little bit of activity. 1.6 this morning, and also a 2.2 way up north into the Illinois area. Now that sits at the northern edge here of the New Madrid seismic zone. There's a couple other fault systems that run up here, but this is the big one that can create large earthquakes. So a little bit of movement out there today. Also New Jersey, seeing a handful of earthquakes there following that 4.8 a couple weeks back now. I think it's been a couple weeks. These are all very small aftershocks. Got about 5 of them here in the last 24 hours. I do want to check out the Earthquakes Canada map here, see if there's anything else going on up north of us. Of course, up north here sits the plate boundary of interest around the, it's kind of an odd map here, the Cascadia, where this current activity is going on. It looks like there's been a lot more earthquake activity than what was reported here from the USGS. Quite a few 4s, some 3s in there as well. So when you put all this activity together, this movement up here, you add a few more earthquakes, right? And quite a bit more that the EMSC is showing here. That makes sense to watch this area, right? Because we know this whole eastern edge of the Pacific Plate is starting to move, starting to adjust out here. And there's so many areas across California that are locked and loaded, and a little push or shove may just set things off in a chain reaction that could trigger some larger scale earthquake activity out here. So got to keep an eye on it. The Cascadia subduction zone itself is pretty quiet. Not a whole lot going on up there for now. All right, let's see what else is happening out here in the middle of it all. Well, I should say the middle of the plate. The big island of Hawaii looks like a 2.3 down underneath the Pahala area, about 32 kilometers or so. Very typical, an ongoing swarm of earthquake activity there for many years. As far as the Kilauea volcano goes, still getting some shallow earthquake activity. If we look at the last 7 days of this area, well, we're seeing a little bit of uptick out here, and some of it looks like it's trailing off here towards the Loihi Seamount. That magma that got displaced here a couple months ago from the summit region went off to the southwest rift zone and kind of followed a trail similar to what we're seeing right now here. So we'll just kind of keep an eye on that. Let's see what we got for any inflation data. I haven't even looked today at that. Last time I checked, it was offline, so hopefully these guys got their data up and running. It's been down for a couple days, and looks like it's back up. It's back up in a big way. Now, it's hard to say if this is the actual data or not. Maybe they just drew a line in there or leveled it out, because that just looks a little odd. You know, a huge spike like that. But, goodness, it was missing some data here. 16th, 18th here, so apparently we are right about here, and it is showing some inflation, getting up there, kind of matching where we were March 2024, back to before the magma displacement here. We're almost up to that similar level, so we'll have to keep an eye on things. It's definitely getting interesting down there underneath the big island. Seismograph stations there show some earthquake activity out there, quite a bit. There's some fluid movement, looks like some magma movement, at least that's what it looks like here on the seismograph station, a couple of them. And general earthquake activity, there's a handful, definitely a handful of earthquakes happening underneath the summit region there of Kilauea Volcano. What do we got in Northern California now? I was just saying how quiet it is. Now we get a 2.0 coming in here in the last 10 minutes outside of the, that's kind of odd. It's south here of this other earthquake that struck this morning. Don't really see a whole lot of earthquake activity specifically here in this region. Up around the Lake Almanor area, yes, we have. But we've noticed some newer earthquake activity happening on the, I guess this would be kind of western area of the Sierra Nevada mountains. But yeah, this one here, 2.7, or that's not the 2.7, it's going to be this one right here, 2.0 near LaPorte. Very shallow earthquake activity out here. All right, let's see what else we have. Anything rocking down there in New Zealand? There's that 2.0. 5.2, fairly shallow earthquake out here in the Tonga region. Doesn't look like there's too much newer activity here across New Zealand for now. Huge seismic area gap between around Papua New Guinea eastward here. Got to keep an eye on that. The Western Pacific regions look very quiet right now. I think that's why we're seeing so much activity ramping up out here across the eastern area of the Pacific Plate. And when that happens here, it's kind of like a teeter-totter effect. It can go either way. I think we need to watch the west coast here, eastern areas of the Pacific Plate, until we see some larger scale activity out here. It just always takes place that way. And this is generally fairly quiet and older movement out here on the globe for now. One little 4.5 in the Japan area, but yeah, this is pretty quiet out here. So keep an eye, eastern areas of the Pacific Plate. Whole bunch of movement happening over there in Turkey following a 5-pointer earlier today. Let's see what we got up here in this area. Seen a 5.6 in the Turkey area. Quite a few aftershocks occurring from that earthquake as well. Fairly shallow at about 10 kilometers or so. That is north of the region of that large earthquake activity last year. Was it last year? Yeah, it was last year, right? Turkey. They had a whole bunch of earthquake activity out here. So away from the plate boundary, definitely seen a whole bunch of aftershock movement there following that 5.6. Starting to get some movement down into the South Sandwich Trench here, subduction zone way down south. 4.6 there. Let's see how deep that is. Looks like about 29 kilometers deep for that quake. The USGS is picking up on it right there, 4.6. That came in a couple hours ago, it looks like. Also another earthquake out here early this morning of 5.2 in the South Atlantic Ocean area. Alaska fairly quiet up here. I mean, this is always typical movement up here. I'm not really skipping out on them, but it's almost very consistent, similar to California. It's a major plate boundary, major subduction zone, which California is not, unless you're off Northern California coast here. Then you got the Cascadia, but just general typical earthquake activity out here across the region of Alaska and the Aleutian Trench for now. I do want to check out the Iceland activity, see what's going on here. And not a whole lot. Things have calmed down here since this morning. This is the last 12 hours, about 41 earthquakes. And around the Grindavik area, looks pretty quiet. Let's give a quick glance there at the Live from Iceland site. That is the site to check out if you want to see the visual perspective of what's going on out here. There's still at least one fountaining crater. That's kind of zoomed in. Let me see what we got for this view. Looks like a beautiful sunrise popping off there in Iceland. Hard to see the crater area, at least from that view. Here's another one, still showing some fountaining there on the this would be the north side over here. Doesn't look like anything's changed. Still continuing here, over a month-long eruption there, Iceland. All right, space weather activity. We're getting very interesting here. Look, the sunspot number's up. SFI number is in the red as well. This is the solar flux index, basically the energy, so to speak, here of all the sunspots, and it's ramping up. They're ramping up once again due to some very large active regions out here. Look at this. Look at this. There's so many sunspots in this one region here. It's crazy looking. Getting a lot of complexity going on here. A lot of growth within a couple of these cores. This whole region here used to be 3615 when it was a few weeks ago when it was back facing the Earth. But it has since done one trip around the far side of the sun, and it's come back with a vengeance as well. It looks like quite a few complex sunspots in there, and that is offering, I guess, here, giving us a potential of some X-flare activity. It looks like a 20% chance for an X-flare. M-flare elevated at 75% chance as well. C-flare at 99% chance. And proton event here up around 20% as well. There was an M2.2. Fairly recent there. 3638 is the culprit of that sunspot. Almost seemed like a gnat just, I don't know. I'm not a big fan of bugs this time of year. So we'll watch all of these sunspots. Definitely ramping up here. We're getting a little bit of auroras here as well across the northern latitudes here around Canada, Alaska, Alaska, Canada, Greenland, and maybe Iceland as well. I don't think they were really calling for it, but it looks like things are kicking up slightly up there across that region. Really not expecting anything major there in the forecast for now. Here's all these massive regions there on the sunspot complex. It's a huge, massive area, and it's something to watch here pretty closely because there's definitely some signs here of growth within many of these cores, and man, this thing looks like a giant monster out there. A huge active region out there. So very could get very active here soon. There's a UV filter array here of this of the sun. There's other sunspots here, but nothing like what is going on here across the central region. This area up here on the northern hemisphere of the sun is doing a little bit of reorganization, it looks like. All other regions look fairly stable. So the main areas right now is going to be within this sunspot complex, as Kevin mentioned there on the solar ham site. Definitely keep an eye on this one. This is staring right at us, and anything that does blast off will be geo-effective. Almost certain. And this here may be the second area to watch for some stronger flaring. All right, what else we got out here? Far side of the sun. We'll watch that in the days ahead. Right now we got way too many sunspots to focus on. All right, Storm Prediction Center. Current day one outlook. Overnight and into Friday morning, chance of severe weather, it looks like they're across that area. Far as the day on Friday, for the day Friday, things are a little bit mellower out here. Generally a large region of thunderstorm activity, but not a whole lot of severe weather potential, maybe wind and some hail threats. It does look like things are really going to ramp up here towards the end of April, beginning of May. Noticing a lot of moisture returning here to the Great Plains area, and that can spell some severe weather out here in the typical zones that we normally see at this time of year. That's this is headed into next Thursday night into Friday. Next weekend looks like there's going to be a pretty decent low pressure system out here. That's going to be a severe weather maker, I'm sure. And then moisture just seems to stick around a lot into the first week of May, it looks like. California, we were expecting a little bit of rain. That has since it's changed quite a bit here. These models can change left and right. That's one thing I've learned over the years of looking at them. But either way, there's no long duration of nothingness. There's definitely going to be some active areas out here through the rest of April and coming into May. All right, so keep an eye, as I've said probably 20 times now, keep an eye on California. Definitely active. And I don't see any signs of it slowing down unless we see some large-scale movement out here across the western areas of the Pacific Plate. We'll catch you guys back here a little bit later. This 4.9 was way early this morning into the southern end of the Kermadec Trench. Just kind of seeing if I remember to cover New Zealand. There's just not a whole lot going on right now. Some older quake activity. All right, guys, take care. We'll catch you guys back out here for a Friday. Tomorrow is Friday. Goodness. All right, already. Have a good one. We'll catch you guys back out here in the morning.